If you're a new hamster owner, then you've probably found yourself wondering where to begin when cleaning out your pet's enclosure. In this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to make this a much more pleasant experience for you and your hamster. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. So first, you're going to need to know how often to clean their enclosure. Larger enclosures generally don't need to be cleaned as often as smaller ones, and cages above 2,903 square centimetres or 450 square inches only really need to be cleaned around once a month. The size of their enclosure will determine how often you need to clean it. I also spot clean every 2 days as well by removing soiled areas of bedding, which I recommend to do for your hamster. Make sure to take your hamster out of their enclosure when cleaning it and put them in a safe place, for example, a playpen or a travel carrier. But don't wake them up because they're nocturnal, they'll find it stressful to be woken up in the day. If the cage isn't very dirty, then you can take out less of the bedding. When cleaning out their habitat, leave around half of the bedding in their cage so they still have a familiar scent when they return to their enclosure. The most important thing to do is remove any pee, which can grow bacteria easily because it's wet. Their poop barely contains any water, which means it doesn't grow bacteria as easily, so if there's only a couple in the enclosure, then that doesn't mean it's dirty. Do remove it if there's an area with a lot of it in though. Pancake pees on top of his bedding and in his burrows, so that's why I'm moving all of the bedding around. If your hamster only pees on top of the bedding, you only really need to remove the top layer, but if they only pee in a certain area, then remove the pee from there. If your hamster has fleas, mites or ringworm or something similar, then you really need an enclosure that's as clean as possible, so it can't reinfect your pet, so you'll need to give it a very thorough clean and ignore this information. You don't really need to wipe the enclosure like I'm doing, but if you need to get rid of any stains, then wipe it using vinegar and water or soapy water, then rinse it and dry it. When cleaning out the enclosure, using a dustpan and brush does make it a lot easier, but I prefer using my hands. I'm adding some soft, dust-free Timothy hay to the bedding to make it more sturdy for Pancake to burrow in. Soft, dust-free orchard grass hay also works well for this. Once you finish removing the dirty bedding, add clean bedding to replace it. Your hamster needs a bare minimum of 6 inches of bedding, but around 10 inches is definitely preferred and recommended. In a section of Pancake's enclosure, the bedding is around 11 inches. Once you've put the clean bedding in, put all of the accessories back in. I use calcium-free reptile sand for their sand bath, but you could also use disinfected children's play sand. If you need to clean any plastic or glass items, then you can use warm soapy water or vinegar and water and a cloth, then rinse and dry it. As you can see here, I use a cup without a base as a burrow starter to encourage Pancake to burrow, which he usually does by himself, but I would suggest doing this for your hamster if they don't really burrow. If you're wondering, Pancake has an 11-inch wheel. You don't really need to reposition anything if your hamster doesn't like it, but Pancake likes exploring an enclosure with a different setup because it's more interesting for him. Your hamster may also like it, but it depends if they like a different setup. Here I'm adding some herbs so Pancake can forage. Make sure the herbs are safe before you put them in your hamster's enclosure. Hamsters like semi-crowded environments as it helps them to feel more secure, and they need plenty of enrichment and foraging toys. They also need wood to gnaw to keep their teeth in shape because they're continually growing. This is Pancake's food, which I've made sure is a good balance of macronutrients, which I'll talk more about in a future video. I like scattering the food around the enclosure and putting it in foraging toys, so Pancake has to look for it. I find this to be quite enriching for them because they seem to quite enjoy looking for the food, which is what they do in the wild, so they don't just have to go to a food bowl and take food. I'm now adding ripped up toilet paper for their nesting. And finally, once the cage is set up, you can put your hamster back into their cage. This is the final result of cleaning Pancake's cage. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye! Please subscribe, like, comment and share.